And this story is not so easy. Now, people on the right are dead set on Karmelo Anthony is guilty and he's wrong.
Wow, imagine that. Yeah, okay.
I'll give you the simple version of the story. There's two high schools, rivals. Karmelo Anthony is sitting under a tent for the rival school. Austin Metcalf, his brother, and several others approach the tent and tell him he can't be there. Karmelo Anthony says he's not going to leave. They exchange words. He says they tell him he's not supposed to be there. He says he grabs his bag, reaches into it, and says, "Touch me and find out what happens." According to police, Austin Metcalf grabbed him, and that's when Karmelo stabbed him once in the chest before fleeing. He was later apprehended by police. Some argue he turned himself in, but I'll read the police report to you. And he said, it's not an allegation, he did it, and he asked if it could be considered self-defense. Now, people on the right have argued, you can't bring a knife to a knife-free zone. You can't bring knives to school. I say, okay. Then if the argument is you believe he premeditated the murder, totally get it. If the argument is on face value, as for the police report, some kid put his hands on him, you got some deep self-defense questions at play.
No, you really fucking don't. Yeah, the kid was not supposed to have the fucking knife in the first place, and it's not a legal self-defense claim to stab somebody who just simply tries to remove you from a fucking area that you're not even supposed to be in the first place, stupid.
Now, this one's extremely tribal, and I got people saying, I'm going to unsubscribe from you, Tim. Okay, dude, whatever, man. You want me to read the police report? You make up your own mind, but I'm going to tell you what I think. And there is no reality where I say my right to keep and bear arms is subject to your vote. But there's questions here.
Your right to keep and bear arms at a high school track event. Sure, Tim. Sure, buddy. That's totally relevant. And by the way, like, even if you were to make an argument that it was okay to have a knife there for some reason, like, obviously that still doesn't justify stabbing somebody over basically nothing.
Here's a story from Human Events. Let's read this first. They say, Austin Peterson writes, if you stab a high school football player through the chest in front of his twin brother, the public response is $250,000 and a round of applause. That's how much Karmelo Anthony, the 17-year-old accused of murdering Austin Metcalf at a Texas track meet, has raised through online donations. Not for the victim's family, but for his legal defense. With every dollar, America proves something ugly. We are no longer a nation that condemns brutality, we sponsor it. The details aren't murky. Witnesses say Metcalf asked Anthony to leave his team's tent. Anthony responded by reaching into his bag and warning, touch me and see what happens. When Metcalf stood up and pushed him, Anthony pulled out a knife and drove it into Metcalf's chest. He fled the scene as Austin collapsed, bleeding out in his brother's arms. Later, when confronted by...
Yeah, that's also another thing that you don't do when you have a legitimate self-defense claim, Tim. You don't literally run away. You let the police apprehend you so you can explain to them what happened and how you acted in legitimate self-defense. You don't run away and then throw the murder weapon somewhere hoping the police won't find it. Tim, that's not typically what you do, stupid.
He fled the scene as Austin collapsed, bleeding out in his brother's arms. Later, when confronted by police, Anthony didn't deny it. I did it, he said. This wasn't self-defense. It wasn't a scuffle gone wrong. It was a boy bringing a weapon to a school event, threatening to use it, and then doing precisely that. But the story didn't end there. It metastasized. Within hours of the stabbing, conspiracy theories began flooding on social media. Fake accounts of impersonating officials claimed Austin was a drug addict, that he died from an overdose, that he'd been bullying Karmelo for months. None of it was true. Beware of those taking the social media to spread misinformation, hate, fear, and division deliberately, warned Frisco Police Chief David Shilson. But it was too late. The falsehoods had already done their work. The killer had lawyers. He had a fundraiser. He had a movement. What he didn't have, what Austin no longer had, was a future. Austin's father, Jeff Metcalf, said he'd forgiven the boy who'd killed his son. God's going to take care of me. God's going to take care of my family, he told NBC. It's a powerful expression of faith, but personal forgiveness doesn't mean justice has been served. It doesn't mean society should follow suit with open wallets. Forgiveness, when chosen freely, can be noble. But when society transforms that personal act into a moral shield for the killer, it becomes something else entirely. Nobody's been convicted. There has been no presentation of evidence. We literally have a story. Someone died. We have witness accounts, and now we want it to be adjudicated.
What are you talking about, Tim? Like, the guy doesn't deny doing it. There were multiple eyewitnesses. Like, I mean, obviously, like we're pointing out the fact that there are so many people who are defending the stabber like you, and it's completely absurd because he has no claim. He has no legitimate claim to self-defense. He's obviously guilty of murder, and people like you are just stupid. People like you just don't fucking understand the reality of what actually happened or the significance of it or the legality of it.
Forgiveness, when chosen freely, can be noble. But when society transforms that personal act into a moral shield for the killer, it becomes something else entirely. Nobody's been convicted. There has been no presentation of evidence. We literally have a story. Someone died. We have witness accounts. And now we want it to be adjudicated.
You're acting like nobody knows what happened in this case. We know what happened. What evidence do you think is going to come out that we don't already have?
That's where I'm at. Yet there are people like Austin who are saying outright, no, he did it. It's a fact. It's amazing to come from a libertarian, I guess. Now, by all means, I don't think Karmelo Anthony was right in any regard, but there are deeper questions here as to court precedent and what it means for you in self-defense, which is why I'm not going to come out right away and say, quick, burn the Constitution. Oh no, a family's crying, quick, burn the Constitution. Not going to happen. I ain't doing it.
This is obviously not a fucking valid self-defense case. The one kid just simply politely asked the other kid to leave. The other kid got indignant and outraged and disrespected over it and decided to stab the other kid. Like, it's very obviously not a self-defense claim. Like, maybe Austin grabbed Karmelo and tried to physically get him to move, which was not an appropriate thing to do. But that doesn't justify stabbing somebody in the heart and killing them over it, dude. Nowhere, in no way, shape, or form does that make sense. Especially because Austin was right in the first place. It was their tent.
I got the police report for you. Here we go. Public information, mind you. All of this is publicly available. Karmelo Anthony is 5'9". He weighs 130 pounds. He's 17 years old, from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Been charged with first-degree murder. Now, I'm going to tell you this, my friends. I think he gets off. I think he will.
Oh my God, you're so stupid, Tim. How the fuck are you as famous as you are when you're this fucking stupid? That blows my mind.
I think he will beat these charges. First degree murder means he went there with the intent to kill. They're
not necessarily. No, you're too stupid to understand this type of shit, Tim. You're just an idiot. It doesn't necessarily mean that he went there with the intent to kill, stupid. Plenty of people have been convicted of first degree murder if they showed in the moment any kind of hesitation where it seemed that they made a conscious decision to kill somebody when they didn't have to. It doesn't necessarily mean that he had to physically go there with the intent of killing somebody. Do you know anything about how the fucking law works? He could still be convicted of second degree murder even if he's charged with first degree murder.
It's fascinating to me that even a libertarian would take such a strong approach. Here's the problems we have. We don't know exactly what went down right now. The body camera footage will help. We have some witness statements, but these are just witness statements. It sounds like Karmelo escalated this and did not need to. But I don't think you're going to get first degree murder, potentially second, maybe even manslaughter. If the law is that you can't have a knife on school grounds, he might.
Of course it fucking is, Tim. Are you joking? You think that you're allowed to just walk around at school with a fucking knife, even if it's after school during a track meet or whatever? You know, no.
He might get first degree murder for this. That could be the extenuating circumstance, for which I disagree. I don't live in a world where you can vote away our right to keep and bear arms and defend ourselves. And I believe that keeping and bearing arms includes knives. I do. Now, Jack Posobiec says there's currently no...
For 17-year-olds that are in school, Tim.
Now, Jack Posobiec says there's currently no evidence Karmelo Anthony acted in self-defense. Also, a crowd of people witnessed what he did, and none of them gave conflicting statements that present any scenario other than a shock stabbing. Videos, photos, anything. I don't think Karmelo's some innocent kid who did nothing. Here's what I think. It was raining. It was downpour. Likely clouds were over the field and rain was coming. This would explain why Karmelo Anthony went to the tent to sit down. According to the witnesses, he went there while the Memorial High School students were already there. Karmelo went and sat down, and these guys said, you can't be here. There was an altercation, which resulted in either a shoving, a touching, or a grabbing. These things matter. If Austin Metcalf simply put his hand on his shoulder and says, bro, you got to go, and then got stabbed, murder. Probably second degree. With the... I would say the extenuating circumstance of a weapon-free zone being a school, you can probably get to first-degree murder. If it was that, Austin Metcalf was with a group of guys and he shoved him, and then he said, touch me and find out what happens, and the guy grabbed him, you literally have a self-defense claim. Now, you could...
You literally do not. Austin had every right to tell the kid to move. Every right. He was somewhere where he was not supposed to be. If Anthony had just simply gotten up and left, nothing would have happened. If Anthony just simply hadn't pulled out the knife, nothing would have happened. He chose to get outraged over a perfectly reasonable request and then murder somebody over it. The fact that Austin may have grabbed his arm to move him along doesn't justify stabbing him in the heart and killing him, you absolute moron, Tim.
You can still argue manslaughter in that regard, that you don't stab a guy for grabbing you. But this is going to play its self-defense in a ton of circumstances, especially in Texas.
It wouldn't be manslaughter anyway. He obviously intended to kill him by stabbing him in the fucking chest. It would be second-degree murder, not manslaughter.
It is not. Okay, this is not a statement on Karmelo Anthony. I'm going to say this generally speaking. It is not my responsibility nor your responsibility to determine the extent of force a person is willing to use when they make contact with you. Okay, that is some blue state garbage. If I am standing my ground in a stand your ground state, and someone touches me, I believe you are the person who was assaulted. They grabbed you with force, with intent. I do not believe it is responsibility of that person to then determine whether or not they are facing serious bodily harm or death.
If you're talking about a situation that's completely unrelated to this with adults, when they're just out on the street and somebody else physically assaults the other person, that person would have the right to defend themselves. But that's not what happened here.
Do not grab and attack people. The problem with this story, Karmelo Anthony escalated it to an extreme degree, and that is going to play here. So he's likely going to get something, but I think they may be overcharging him. I reject wholeheartedly, especially from these libertarians, that a school says you're not allowed to have weapons. Oh, spare me. Did the dude grab a steak knife from the cafeteria? Did he have a combat blade? Did he have a switchblade? Was it a utility knife? These things matter.
That's completely irrelevant. Are you joking?
But the whole argument about gun-free zones, ridiculous. My right to self-defense and use of any means to do so if I feel that I'm being threatened does not end because you voted I have no right to defend myself. I am not saying Karmelo Anthony did. I'm saying if these schools that are gun-free zones, they're only allowing criminals and perpetrators to do their deed. And this case, if that were the case, it's further evidence. This was a weapon-free zone. How did Karmelo Anthony have a weapon there?
Dude, nobody cares. That's a different discussion for a different fucking day. Nobody cares about that. I mean, even if this were not a weapon-free zone, quote unquote, he still would be in the wrong to bring the knife anyway. He doesn't need to have the knife. They live in a very nice part of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. This is a very wealthy, safe part of town. They don't need to be walking around carrying knives. Even if he had some reason to have the knife on him, so what? So what? What is that supposed to prove? He still shouldn't have stabbed somebody over basically nothing.
Now the right is arguing he violated a weapon-free zone. I am playing that game. The argument here is, did he actually perceive a threat? You're going to get a jury. The jury is going to say, first-degree murder, he intended to kill somebody. They're going to say, no, it was about the thunderstorm. Police say so. He went to sit under the tent because he wanted to stay dry. The other students tried pushing him off. He didn't want to get wet. A physical altercation ensued, and he...
Okay, this is going to be an interesting legal defense here, Tim. He didn't want to get wet, Your Honor, so it's cool that he stabbed another kid. It's like, what in the fuck are you talking about, Tim? Like, there were other tents he could have sat under.
The other students tried pushing him off. He didn't want to get wet. A physical altercation ensued, and he drew a knife and used it. The question that's going to arise in court is, did he have a legal right to do so? Well, I tell you this, the liberals are going to say, nope, it's a weapon-free zone. Karmelo's going to get in trouble. But if this were, look, the people that are coming out outright and just saying he's a stone-cold killer, I mean, Jack, I disagree. There's no evidence he acted in self-defense. I mean, I don't say it's strong evidence, but they're going to make this argument. The defense will say, it's a cloudy day with thunder clouds, storm clouds above. Forecast calls for rain. You're outside in a field, rain is coming. A young man...
It wasn't even raining at the time? It's not even raining at the time, and he's hiding underneath a tent because it's going to rain in the future? That's an even worse argument. That's even dumber.
A man by himself walks and sits under a tent when a group of other boys tell him to get out. Tell him that he's got to leave, and then we've got either he was touched, which I can disregard. Touching someone is nothing. Someone could be freaked out by it, but he was grabbed or shoved by an individual who was with a larger group of kids. Now, that's not bullying, but the defense will argue Karmelo became terrified. Here he is, surrounded by a bunch of guys he doesn't know, who then initiate a fight with him. And he warns them, touch me and find out what happens. He's telling them to back off. They then...
Yeah, but that's the problem with that too. You know, touch me and see what happens. That just sounds like he's challenging him. You know, it sounds like he's basically saying, you know, touch me, you won't, you little pussy, like that kind of a thing. And maybe Austin interpreted that way. Like, this is sometimes how young men interact with one another when they get upset. And again, no one is thinking that there's going to be a knife at play. No one's thinking that. This is not a normal reaction to stupid teenager bullshit, dude. It's not at all.
He warns them, touch me and find out what happens. He's telling them to back off. They then proceed to grab him.
Why didn't he take out the knife from the bag and say, really, motherfucker, you want a piece of me? That would be one thing. And then if Austin had touched him, that would be a different story. He would still be in the wrong, but at least that would be a different story. But again, Austin didn't know that Anthony had the fucking knife until it was too late.
Push him or touch him or otherwise. And so he stabs this kid, and the defense will say it was self-defense. Do you think a jury is going to buy that? Maybe not. They're going to say you don't need to stab somebody.
Jury's definitely not going to buy that.
The jury is going to play racial politics in this 100%. They're going to say that he was terrified that these kids were going to beat him up, and he's seen stories. My point.
He's seen stories. Yes, there are so many stories of like young white guys beating the fuck out of young black men, especially ganging up on them. Not the other way around. No. The other way around never happens. But that specific scenario happens so much. Like, bro, what are you talking about?
On this case, has nothing to do with this specific case. It is that conservatives are coming out and saying weapon-free zones. They're saying, we know what happened. It's not in dispute. And I'm like, the left said the same thing of Kyle Rittenhouse. They lied about what happened. They said that he wasn't legally allowed to carry a weapon, therefore it was murder. The arguments flew across the board. So I say, let the courts handle it. And if you're rooting for a conviction, by all means, I hope you get one. But when Kyle Rittenhouse was attacked and defended himself, how was he attacked? He ran away, he heard a gunshot and turned around, and Rosenbaum reached out, swiping the tip of the gun, so Kyle shot him. The argument for the left was he had no right to use lethal force against someone who was simply swiping with no weapons at him. Wrong. Kyle Rittenhouse was found to have acted in self-defense, even though the guy chasing him was unarmed. Kyle had reasonable fear of death because this guy was chasing him and then reached out for him. In fact, Kyle wasn't even touched when he shot Rosenbaum, I think 3 times, with a rifle.
But Rosenbaum obviously was chasing Kyle. That's not what happened here. And also, Kyle has a gun, so there's already a weapon in the scenario. And of course, Kyle knows if this raving lunatic who's screaming stuff all night long at me catches up with me and gets my gun, he might shoot me with it. So don't you think that the situations are a little bit different, Tim?
He was then approached. He was hit by the one guy with the skateboard, and he shot him because he was on the ground. He was actually hit in that regard. The other guy approached him holding a gun, and he shot the guy's arm, vaporizing his bicep. Crazy. But understand the argument they made about Kyle Rittenhouse. There's a bunch of libertarians and pro-gun individuals that are roasting all of these people on the right, saying you never believed in self-defense or the right to bear arms. It's not about whether you think Karmelo Anthony's intent or motive. It's about, are we going to say that the law can ban your right to have a weapon? The law can say you can't carry a knife or otherwise.
This is not the foundation of this story. Nobody cares about this, Tim. You're just making this crap up. This is not about, whether you have a right to carry a weapon. This really isn't about self-defense either. Like, these were teenagers. This is really a story about how a certain demographic has uniquely low impulse control. That's just the reality of it. That's the true heart of this story, not any of this garbage.
Are we going to wait for the facts on this case, or are we going to say it's not self-defense if someone grabs you? Okay, then Kyle Rittenhouse didn't act in self-defense. Rosenbaum never grabbed him. I don't play these tribal games, dude. I'm not playing this game. Believe whatever you want to believe, root for what you want. I just read you the police report, not the entirety of it, but much of their accounts, and those are the facts as stated. I don't think Karmelo Anthony's life was in danger. I believe he acted unreasonably for sure. They are going to make a self-defense argument, and they have what I would describe as a weak self-defense argument, but it's not absent. It's there. They're going to say a young man, 17, 130 pounds, surrounded by a bunch of dudes, and one of them shoves him, and he warns him not to touch him, and the guy grabs him. That's what the jury's going to hear. When they get these other kids on the stand, they're going to say, yes, Austin did grab him, did push him. That's in the police report, and I believe on body camera footage. Not to mention, the first statements made by Karmelo were, I was defending myself. I was protecting myself. And I'll tell you this, the story is absolutely going to change. So, currently no evidence. The body camera footage has a statement from Karmelo. His testimony is considered evidence. It is witness testimony. Typically, you don't have the perpetrator testify because it's considered not very credible or incredulous, in which case, by all means, choose to disregard that. But you also have statements from others that he was shoved, touched, or grabbed. Now imagine a scenario like I already mentioned with Kyle Rittenhouse, who wasn't actually touched. And people are saying getting shoved it does not give you the right to use lethal force. Tell Kyle Rittenhouse that, who wasn't even shoved and got off on self-defense. Guys, I'm not playing this game. Do whatever you want. I'll leave it there. Smash the like button or not or whatever. I'm going to wait for the facts on this case, and I don't know exactly how it went down. There's no videos. It is what it is. Believe what you want. You're entitled to it.
I probably should have pointed this out too, and the comments are pointing this out. Kyle was threatened throughout the day. Even if he hadn't physically attacked Kyle, he grabbed Kyle's rifle. So that's really the more important thing.
It's strange to me that with this story, the right is adamant that this kid just killed another kid and he should go to prison forever. And I'm like, we don't even know what happened. Like, you've got witness testimony that sounds like a fight happened at a school.
We literally know everything that happened.
Then I've heard the argument, yeah, well, he shouldn't have had a knife. He brought a knife to a school, and it's like, okay, what kind of knife was it? Was it a utility knife? Was it a switchblade? Was it a machete? Like, did he have a steak knife? Was he coming back from culinary class where he had fine Japanese blades for cutting cucumbers? I have no idea.
Was that supposed to be like a fucking joke? What the fuck are you talking about? What difference does it make where he procured the knife? Where he got it? What kind of knife it is? Who the fuck cares about that? That's completely irrelevant.
You're allowed to carry knives I'm pretty sure in Texas.
Not in school, you fucking idiot.
Especially if it's like a utility blade. You're also not allowed to grab people. So the crazy thing about this story is that people are demanding give, send, go, take down a fundraiser. I'm like, what is this? GoFundMe? No. But I also want to say to Jacob Wells, why is he acting like I can't do it because someone on the right will have? No. If I was CEO, I'd come out and be like, I don't care what you think. Bye. Boycott me. Go away. People are saying that Texas schools ban weapons. Okay. I'm just saying, like, why are people acting like this is a...
Bro, is there any school that doesn't? Is there a school in America where, like, the 17-year-olds are just allowed to carry around knives? Like, that's totally cool. Like, what are you talking about, Tim? Of course not.
I'm just saying, like, why are people acting like this is a case where a dude showed up to murder somebody? It's like a dude shouldn't have had a weapon, so he's gonna get some kind of, like, manslaughter charge or something like that.
Why the fuck would it be considered manslaughter? He deliberately killed another fucking person. He didn't accidentally kill him, you idiot.
And then the fight broke out and it shouldn't have happened. I got to be honest. I get it. It's a bad story. I don't know why people are losing their minds over it. Yeah.
Well, the racial component is why. People.
I guess
people want to jump in and take sides, and they want to, if they've got a preconceived notion about another group of people, they're just like, oh, well, that's how it.
I mean, like, certain stories become memes in of themselves.
Oh yeah,
and let me clarify what I'm saying. It's that every single day I see like 12 stories like this. So when the story popped up, I was like, why is this story like the meme? Like, why is this the story?
His name's Carmelo Anthony, probably.
Yeah, maybe because of viral search trends. Because we got stories in Baltimore and DC are right here, dude. You want to Google such a story about a white kid who got stabbed to death by a black guy? You can.
I'll tell you. Hey,
go to Chicago. It happens every day.
Military tactic for our.
I figured. I'm reading the chats. I understand what everyone's saying that I didn't understand about the story. When laws are passed banning weapons from zones like a weapon-free zone, you're not allowed to bring them there. And if a fight breaks out, you can't use them. That's why he's going to jail.
Okay.
So
that's not the only reason why he's going to jail. Even if he had a legal right to have the weapon there, he did not have a legal right to stab that kid basically over nothing and then run away and try to hide the murder weapon, Tim. He did not have that right.
Like, weapon-free zones, you don't bring weapons there.
Yeah,
like self-defense is not going to apply to a weapon-free zone. If you bring a weapon to a place where they tell you can't have weapons, your self-defense argument's not going to apply.
Yeah, and in Texas they have two different signs. Like they can have a sign that says you're not allowed to conceal, and they have signs that say you're not allowed to open carry. And if they post either of them, you're required to abide by what the store or the property owner says.
Okay. Right. So regardless of what the circumstances around like the guy's character, because people are saying like he skipped school, he wasn't supposed to be there. Right, but that's not going to play out in a court.
Yeah, he's just a geek.
If you go into an area where they've banned weapons and you bring a weapon, you have no self-defense argument if someone puts their hands on you, okay?
Gotcha.
You can't do that.
You know, what you were saying, Corey, like,
if you're in a school and someone grabs you and you're armed, you have no Second Amendment rights. It's null. You're not going to be able to argue that. The law is the law. You can't defend yourself.
Yep.
Well, you can. You just can't use the weapon.
okay, legally. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what it is he brought a weapon into a no weapons allowed area, and then when the guy put his hands on him, whether it was touching or grabbing, he's not no claim of self-defense.
Interesting.
So, I just got to say right now, guys in the chat, it's a bit histrionic. I don't know what I don't know. I think there's no coherent response now. Now everyone's angry saying that's not true. You have a right to defend yourself no matter what. Well, no. He went to a school with a weapon. You can't bring weapons to schools in any capacity. That's why this is not a case of self-defense. But now people are arguing, saying it's wrong. It's a stand your ground state. And even if you're at a school, you have a right to defend yourself. Some people are saying you have no right to use lethal force if someone is shoving you, while others are also claiming you do.
When someone shoves you, you have a right to kill them in a school when you're a minor. Yeah, that's a no, Tim. That's definitely a no.
Y'all have convinced me. I am on board. No more Second Amendment. We voted it out. We say you're not allowed to have weapons. And I'm not saying specifically to this case with this kid, but y'all are the people that are saying he shouldn't have had a weapon. It's a weapon-free zone. Correct. From now on, no one's allowed to have guns. If we vote, you can't have.
Are kids allowed?
Oh God, make the stupidity stop. Yeah, Tim, that's exactly analogous to what happened in this scenario. Just totally analogous. A kid carrying a knife that he's not supposed to have on school grounds is totally comparable to everybody in the country just doesn't get to have the Second Amendment anymore. Sure, Tim, great argument.